to try and visualize a being. And there are barriers to that, which you've got to surmount. So there are gates. There are, in fact, 6 gates, but 4 you will actually see on one plane, and then 1 above and 1 below that you won't see. And it's always, of course, the gates that we don't see that we fail to enter, right? So here, Tenzing, I think, has just taken the basic principles of a mandala and extended them and interpreted them entirely as a visual being, with some reference to his heritage and his past, but really dealing with the issues of now in terms of using iconography that's potent now. I mean, you might see this, what appears in the lower sector, there's a little yellow square with 2 rectangles poking up with a red blast element against one of them. Twin Towers, terrorism. Not something you'd find in a traditional mandala, but certainly something that a traditional mandala will try and ward against. Another question, yes ma'am?
When you were doing this, were you thinking specifically of the United States because, you know, 9/11 being so potent in terms of what it's done to us as a country? I mean, what was your influence with that?
Did everybody hear that? Whether this mandala was really devised in response to things going on in the United States or more broadly, internationally?
Yeah, I mean, I was using language, so when I wanted to talk about terrorism, that thing came first in my mind. But I think this is not just a problem of America or any other country. I think it's everyone's problem. So it's a global issue and a universal issue too. So, however, I wanted to communicate with audience, and from that perspective, I felt that was more appropriate. So that's why I used that image.
Yes.
I wonder how you chose your colors.
Colors were, I treat this more like a painting. So it wasn't predetermined like how the traditional one would be. So I was more flexible. At the same time, I really didn't have exact path to go. So traditional one would consider the 5 colors with 5 buddhas and all, but this one has nothing to do with it. So it was, I treated it as any like oil color.
Other questions? Yes.
I understand you brought the sand from Brooklyn, but where is the sand from, and what will happen to the sand after the destruction ceremony?
The sand, I asked it from the monastery where I studied this, and they were very kind, and they sent me enough to make this one. It's from Nepal. And after the ceremony, I mean, I think I should ask Tim.
Ask housekeeping. No, traditionally, what usually happens is that you want to try and disperse the sand of the mandala because it embodies a very powerful wish, and to fulfill it you want to be able to spread that wish around the world. It's rather akin to prayer flags, which are strung across mountain passes and at high places in order to for the wind to pass the blessings or the prayers that are written or illustrated on them around the world. Well, what we're trying to destroy here is actually to be destroyed, and therefore not to be kept and not to be dispersed. So we're not going to encourage you to pick up any grains of sand and traipse them through the museum. But that really was Tenzing's sort of initial wish, that this was a really sort of an anti-mandala, if you will. It was the converse of what usually happens. Another question. Let's have one right over there. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I noticed that you have the Olympic symbols and a train track. Would you talk about what that means?
Oh, sure. I wanted to symbolize something, like we have big companies, like Google, we have World Bank, we have all those big companies. And at times they follow a convention, they become a conventionalist for the sake of convenience, they become very short-sighted and they don't see very far. And for example, the train track represents the train that they built from Beijing to Assam. And the consequences in major cities in Tibet, the Tibetans are becoming minority. And so same thing with Olympic. I think I don't have any grudge against Olympic, but then they're supposed to promote peace and harmony through sports. At the same time, when you give away certain contracts to certain country, like human rights violation, if you look, probably the China would win gold medal for that. So this, however, this is not particularly aiming like China. I think, who is China? I mean, it's not a border. I think it's the thought, the principle that one beholds. So, but then I have to use the language to, so that people like her can, she can ask me those questions. So, something like that, to represent that, that kind of thinking.
Well, and also on the global front, Tenzing, I mean, you've got a globe that's melting.
Yeah.
And one can safely assume that to be global warming, right?
Yeah.
So you're trying to use symbols that will spark an understanding of the universal condition.
Yeah, so I think these problems are everyone's problem, not just limited within one nation. So it's a global problem. Yes.
Why did you choose dance as the medium to destroy?
Why did he use dance as a medium for destruction?
I always call it aesthetic destruction or deconstruction. So in a sense that I don't want to say that, hey, when we say destruction, we have the notion of being angry, violent, and destruction, like going there, having war or something. But I think this is more of an aesthetic destruction, meaning that it has more subtlety and more profound imprints on mind, you know. So that's my intention. But rather than like having people go over there and with hammer hitting it, I thought with dance it'll be more beautiful.
What were you thinking about when you were doing this? Is it the kind of thing where you sit there and is it part of like a larger meditative practice, or is it you're thinking about, you know, like I have enough sand to get the rest of this in, you know?
I mean, all those things together, you know. I mean,
there was Tenzing's state of mind when he was actually doing the sand mandala, whether it was meditative or whether he was more concerned about whether he'd have enough sand, practical issues, was the air conditioning on, was it going to destroy his painting before, etc.
I think all of this together, but I don't know much about meditation, to be honest. But at times it really feels peaceful when you're doing it. So if that is considered meditation, probably it is. But I don't know about that. But it was more of improvisation, the process, where I did have an idea where I want to go, but how I want to go, I didn't know that. So whenever people come and see the painting, I'll always talk to them, you know. And one day we have 4 individuals coming in. I wanted to pick one color. And one guy said, like, yellow. And the other said, no, green. And the other said, red. And I said, I cannot put all these colors in there. But then there were also times when the outermost circle, actually 3 of those were created by the people who came here. I let them work on it. Yeah, so it's a collaborative thing, more interesting, interactive. So, yes.
It sounds like you didn't have the entire design mapped out on day one. Did you, in terms of your creative process, did you have a rough idea of what you wanted to do and then it came together through the interaction, or did you have sketches and designs?
When I first met him, I showed him the sketch, and that sketch doesn't look at all like that. So
I'm horrified, I really am.
So at the same time, I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something, issue that deals globally, but I didn't know how to design it and all. So I was just playing with it, and I really didn't have like exact plan, everything planned out. So, and I really don't know how. Even if I go back, if I walk backwards, still I don't know how I got it exactly. But most probably it's the interaction with the people who came here.
What's going to be interesting is because we have filmed at, I think, about 10-minute intervals, the process of this sand painting come together from an overhead camera. And so he might not remember how it all came together, but we can probably piece it together. And we're going to show the world, because we'll put it on our website as a sort of experiential digital download. I think it would be pretty cool. Any more questions before we get going? Yes, ma'am.
At what point did you color the sand? How did you color it?
I asked this one from the monastery, but then usually it's a grinded marble, dyed with watercolor, and when you want to dry it, you dry it dark, without light, so that there's no photolysis and you retain the brightness. So that's the simple. And there was one...
One question right at the back, sir.
Is my the last question?
Not necessarily.
You just said about China winning the gold medal when it comes to human rights violation. How would that relate to your now you just created? If you then used to create that, you said that, how would you relate that, the San Bernardino, making the San Bernardino with human rights violation? Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, I'll repeat the question. How would Tenzing Rigdal relate his sun painting to Tenzing's statement that China would probably not win a gold medal for human rights, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
He said that, like,
Yeah.
China would probably win the gold medal for human rights violation.
Right.
And how is that linked with the Mandarin history? Can you elaborate on it?
I mean, for instance, I hope I have understood the question, but yeah, for instance, the background color was red, and then I had Olympic sign, and then I have the railway track, so that it'll tell like, oh, it's the 2008 Olympic that I'm talking about, not just Olympic, all Olympic. And then why China? I mean, does anyone agree that there are human rights violations in China? Okay. So okay. So that's good. That's good.
Anybody disagree? That's just that's right.
I mean, there are so many things. Like I recently read in Time magazine that they have passed a new law saying that you cannot reincarnate any new lamas without the government's approval. First thing. Second thing is you cannot reincarnate outside Chinese border, and these kind of things also happen. So it is pretty clear that they violate human rights and all. And it's not when I hate to say China, you know, I don't think it's just China, but it's the ideology or the principle on which they stand that we have to attack.
Any other questions? Because we have one. Oh, yes, okay, the youngest person in the audience, maybe. What's your question? Do you want to transliterate for us? Perfection. That's really the difficult one. Tenzing.
I think it's the your perfect eye that's looking at it that makes it perfect. But
I think that's a beautiful note on which to end, don't you? Now, I've just got one very practical plea. We have dancers who are going to come into this theatre right now, and they're going to come through the aisles, which means that anybody in the aisles, please, you can stay there, but just stand, because I don't want anybody to trip up on their way. And please make sure the steps are absolutely clear and that you stand well aside, which means you might want to move back a little bit. And here they come. Stand by for the destruction ceremony.
Actually, they're from Gorshekituk, and they have a very small group, and they always practice dance and all. And their main objective is always to preserve culture and art and all. And whenever they have certain funds, money that they make, they spend it on helping other people, like sick or all those. So I thank them as well for coming here.